the history and mechanics that you're interested in. So what EFT is, so EFT is it's a mind-body self-care tool that is used for like all kinds of things. It was originally developed for working with phobias. But so basically it's bringing your thoughts, your emotions, like the energy pathways in your body into relationship with each other while you're working with something difficult. And it can, it's great for relieving stress and all kinds of things. So it works with the acupoints and the energy meridians identified by traditional East Asian medicine. So you're just tapping on the ends or you're rubbing the points. And then psychologist Roger Callahan explored the use of acupoints for treating phobias and thought field therapy. And then engineer Gary Craig and psychologist Pat Carrington both developed EFT as a way to simplify Callahan's protocols to make tapping more accessible and shareable. So really like the heart of EFT, traditional East Asian medicine has a lot of like community ethic to it and, preventative care ethic. And EFT also was created to really maximize the amount that this can be done in community. The hippos here, there's some hippos playing in the water. And the question is there anything you used to be anxious about that you feel quite at home in now? And this image is a picture, this is a reference to the apocryphal story about how Roger Callahan first developed thought field therapy. So he had a client with who was phobic about water, like she couldn't take a bath, she couldn't take a shower. And so he just thought, oh, like you have anxiety. So the stomach point, that's good for anxiety. So he said, well, why don't you just tap here and like tune into this phobia? And he happened to have a swimming pool in his yard. And so she tapped on that and she said, oh, I'm not afraid of water anymore. And she ran out and she put her feet in the pool. So he was like, oh, there's something to explore here. And then, as TFT and EFT developed, they looked at more and more of the different applications of it. And so how does EFT work? So the premise of EFT is that emotional distress is caused by a disruption in the body's energy system. The old phrase is that negative emotions are caused by a disruption in the body's energy system, but I don't think the idea of a negative emotion is that applicable. Like emotions are just trying to give us information. And so in traditional East Asian medicine, the body's energy system is organized in part by meridians or energy lines that run along the body. And different meridians relate to different organs, and each point relates to different issues. And here's some striped dolphins diving down together. What is your sense of the interconnection among your emotions, your energy, and your body? I think animals can model so much for us, like how to be embodied with joy and resilience and sensitivity. Okay. And so when we tap a point, we say, pay attention here, and bring the healing focus of our energy system to that point. And acupoints tend toward homeostasis, so we do not need to consciously direct the balancing. And when we tap on the end of a meridian, we engage and balance the whole meridian. And all of the meridians are interconnected, which is why it's okay to skip some points. Can you recall a time when you experienced healing when you paid attention to something important? Here's a mother and baby giraffe. The mother's bending down to check on the baby. And Harvard Medical School researchers have found that stimulating select acupoints deactivates the stress response in the amygdala and alters the neural pathways of the fight or flight response. So basically, like when you're tapping, like you might say, like, even though I'm really upset about this, even though this event really scared me, even though, I have this overwhelming craving. It's sort of like whatever's happening, like you're kind of bringing that home to this experience of I can be with this issue and I can turn off the fight or flight, so it really changes our footing and relationship to the things that feel overwhelming to us. And then it brings us like out of like the crisis place to like the creative space of like, oh, okay, like what are the possible ways I can relate to this? This allows blood to return to the brain from the muscles. And we're most able to have breakthroughs when we're feeling safe enough to be curious. And here's a scrub jay. These are some of my best buds. When we feel at ease, we have room for the exciting questions. And just briefly, some issues EFT can be helpful with. So releasing stress and trauma, changing life patterns, easing pain, increased energy and focus, relieving cravings, improved sleep, improved physical well-being, better immunity, greater self-understanding, more harmonious relationships, resolving inner conflicts around goals. Like whenever there's something that we're struggling with, like we want it, but we're not doing it. It's like there's some part of us that's not on board. And tapping can really help sort of bring more relationship between those parts that like do and don't want to do something, or maybe it can like, we can like tap down our fears around the thing that we really want. Because it's a vulnerable thing to want something, it's a vulnerable thing to be invested and desiring, because we might be disappointed, we might get hurt. EFT can also support better self-care and self-worth, greater capacity for presence and witness, and stronger capacity for contributing to healing in the world. And try it on everything is Gary Craig's catchphrase. And here's a kitten who super, super, super wants to go outside. I think the kitten's smelling on a screen. And the question, is there anything you long for that feels impossible right now? And just notice, is it okay to tune into that? There's an EFT technique where you write down all the reasons why something can't happen. And you just tap through each of those. And then EFT research, again, I'll sort of go through this quickly. There's a mountain of research. A lot of it you can find at EFTuniverse.com. So according to David Feinstein, research shows that EFT is effective, fast, and has lasting benefits. And in meta-analysis, EFT has had an unusually high effect size for PTSD, anxiety, and depression. And then here's some close-up of some fireweed blossoms. Are there any possibilities for healing that you're curious about? And what's it like to hold space for that? Some other advantages of EFT. So this is part of the accessibility. I like to jump in with the EFT. We'll do that in just a moment, but I just want to sort of front load it with some of the different variations to make sure that everybody can participate with it. So EFT is such a fast and effective tool that even folks who are reluctant to try something new can quickly experience its benefits. And more importantly, EFT can help restore a sense that healing is not only possible, but also enjoyable. EFT is also accessible because it's simple and cost-free. And for intense traumas, it's generally helpful to work with a trained professional. Be aware of your own needs and limits. And here's a baby donkey taking shelter in the mama. And it says, do you have any hesitation about trying something new? which is a totally normal thing our brain does, right? Like on the one hand, we're curious, and on the one hand, we're hesitant. Okay, so I'll just show the points briefly. So you can start here or here. I'll go through this in the next couple of slides too. But just so you have a sense, I'll just be sort of tapping while I'm explaining this. So EFT is most effective when you follow the recipe, like the sort of standard points, but it's innately flexible and can be modified for your comfort and ease. And if you feel like tapping with me right now, that's fine. If you'd like to wait, that's fine. So you can tap, rub, or touch the points. Once you're familiar with the points, thinking about them also fires your proprioceptive neurons, the part of your nervous system that understands where you are in time and space. Like this can be like especially helpful, like if you're going to sleep and you want to tap, you can just kind of like, you don't have to go through the movements. You can just think about it. And so you can skip points that are out of your comfortable range of motion or which make you self-conscious. And here's a sloth hanging upside down looking at the camera. It's okay to modify any practice to suit your process of healing. So non-tapping. So if the tapping points feel like confusing or overwhelming, or just like the reaching is difficult, you can tap on alternate sides of your body. So this is an EMDR technique. So you can tap on your shoulders like this, or you can tap on your thighs, or you can tap your feet on the floor if you find the routine strenuous. You can sit, stand, or lie down. And you can have someone else physically tap on the points in your body if you're comfortable with that. Animals love it, I find. It can be, if it's somebody you're close to, it can be a really sort of soothing bonding experience to tap on the other person. And it's also something that's, if it's someone who trusts you and they're just not, like say they might have too much anxiety or too much confusion, to like access self-care, like having that kind of support can be really lovely. And you can also use the EFT setup structure while rocking if hand movements don't work for you. Rocking is a fundamentally soothing thing. And it's something that, like, again, it's this EFT principle of bridging, like you're bridging like left, right, or front, back, or if people want to rock this way. And here's a bear apparently enjoying themselves, lying in some water and touching their forehead. And it says you can make yourself as creatively comfortable as possible while you practice EFT. And just a few more variations. So using bridges instead of tapping. So the fundamental process of EFT is bridging. Bridging a part that is experiencing distress and a part that is more grounded and connected. Bridging thoughts, emotions, body, energy, etc. You can do body bridges, front and back of the head, or heart and belly, heart and sacrum, the bone at the back of the pelvis, belly and sacrum, hip to hip. You can really play around with like what just sort of brings one thing into relationship with something else. When we have anything that's too much for us to process at the time that it happens, which is, that's one way to define trauma. It's like the adaptive thing is that we isolate that until we feel like we have more support and time to tend to it. So it's like bridges are sort of implicitly signaling like, hey, like I know there's this thing in distress, but there's this whole other aspect of myself that's already present here. So that's one way that the bridging works. And you can also start from a place of bridging concepts in relation to each other if your body feels overwhelming. The body comfort and trust can come later. And here's a squirrel reaching from one branch to another to smell some flowers or eat some flowers. The tendency of beings to heal and thrive blossoms when we allow things to come into relationship with each other. I always love the quote from Bill McDonough that the best way to heal an ecosystem is to bring it into more relationship with itself. Which is why things like the border wall are so disruptive to ecosystems, because it's like the parts of it want to communicate with each other. Okay, and then some other variations for accessibility, alternatives to words. You can use the EFT setup phrases, or if you have trouble accessing words, you can focus on images, emotions, memories, and sensations. So the EFT setup phrase, it's like, even though this, and then you're bringing it into relationship with the larger truth. Like, so even though I have this anxiety, the rest of me knows that I'm safe right now. Or even though I'm really frustrated with this pattern that I have, I totally and completely love and accept myself. So that's the sort of basic setup. But if that feels cumbersome, you can just kind of tune into whatever feels hot in whatever way that's appearing to you. Hi. This is my cat Mariposa. Okay. And you can also sing or hum your way through tapping as a way to bring emphasis and levity to the process. And here's an octopus doing some pretty complicated octopusing. What ways of being with yourself feel potent and meaningful to you? And some of this work is just sort of slowing down and noticing what's already healthy, and noticing what your body already knows how to do. You probably have a lot of unconscious processes of resetting and self-care. And the more we tune in, the more we can kind of just appreciate and support that in ourselves. Okay. So now let's just, are there any questions now, or do you want to try the tapping?
It looks like we don't have any questions.
Okay. Yeah, does everything feel clear so far? Okay. So here's the points. So let's just go through these and learn the points. And we'll start with, go ahead and pick something from this list. Whether that's your breath, your posture, your well-being, just your general sense, your alertness, relaxation level, or some other focus. I think it's always important to have a something else option with multiple choice. And rate it 0 to 10. So 0 being everything's great, there's no distress, there's nothing going on. 10 is the most distress you could possibly have. I'd recommend not picking a 10 for the purposes of these practices. But just sort of notice where it's at right now. Okay. And then, so to start with, you can start in two places. Okay, so I'm going to flip back over to seeing you all so I can tell I'm on camera here. Okay. So you can start with, it's called the sore spot or the neurolymphatic reflex. You're talking to the lymph flow from here. And you just rub it, and you start with the setup phrase. We'll skip the setup right now and just sort of tune in to the issue. But normally you say the setup phrase 3 times, either here or the other place is on the side of the hand, sort of right below this knuckle. But sorry, right below the head of the metacarpal hair. And, you know, and you can rub it or you can tap it or you can hold it. And you might find that there's, like, as you engage with it, like there's like some energy response there. So that's the first point. The next one is the top of the head. And the way to find that is like if you fold your ear and then go from the point up to the top of the head. And like that one tends to be like a little bit sharpish. This one is a great one for alertness. You know, this one isn't the ideal point if you're trying to fall asleep, maybe. And then the next one, the next three are all along the orbital socket. So there's one here. And there's one here. Am I large enough? Should I do you like having the slide up, or should I stop the share for this?
It looks great from my end, but if anyone in the chat feels differently, please say so.
Okay. And then under the eye, you can kind of feel the little notch in the bone here. This is that famous stomach point that started it all. And then the next two you can do together, so under the nose and under the mouth. And most of these points you can access, you know, one hand. Like if you're sitting in a traffic light and you've got a hand on the wheel, you can do most of them with one hand. So then the next one is under the collarbone. So this one, you go down under the collarbone and you're right under it and you're next to the sternum. And this point should have some tenderness. Like if it's not tender, you're probably not quite on it. Hi. Yes. This is one of the cats who likes EFT. So that one. And then the next one, so you can either tap this way or tap this way. It's sort of like if you're wearing a bra, it's sort of in the middle of the bra strap. Hi. And then the next one, so they took this out of the protocol because they didn't want people to feel self-conscious. Whoops. Wait a minute. Okay. Sorry, I just flipped tabs. They didn't want people to feel self-conscious, but like it's sort of like right here on the chest. And like if this feels like it's not easy to access, or like people just don't want to touch it, like you can also like tap along here and also talk to the liver meridian. And to me, like it's worth doing because like liver regulates like anger and courage, you know. So I think a lot of times like it's our suppressed anger that's like driving a lot of our distress. And so it's like if we can kind of like bring that home, you know, we can access it through all the other points, but like I think it's important to include that. And so then the next one, so the hand points are all at the lower corner of the nail, like on the thumb side. Here, here, here. And then there's no meridian on this side of the middle finger, but then on the pinky. And then there's also, like you can add in the meridians on this side, on the side away from the thumb of the ring finger and the pinky. And then another thing, like you can really sort of play with how you like to do that. Like, do you like to tap like one hand at a time through like that? Some people like to just kind of like pinch both sides like this, which I think, like, to me, like, okay, so there's not a meridian on this side, but like actually the Korean acupressure map, like there's meridians all over the hand. So like, I don't know, I think it's fine. Like I've been doing this one a lot lately myself. Like it's just simple and a little bit easier manually. But this is sort of part of how there's like all kinds of different variations. Okay. And so then the last point is the gamut sequence. And so this, I tend to do this like every several rounds or like at the end of a tapping. But there's an eyeball roll in this, and like that's really helpful for releasing the vagus nerve, because the vagus nerve like exits through here. So if you want to just touch gently the back of your head and just sort of feel the suboccipital muscles as you're rolling your eyes, you know, you can see how much movement back there that creates. It's pretty profound. And it also does a lot of like cross-hemispheric brain connecting. Okay, so the gamut sequence, you touch or rub this point, and you close your eyes, you open your eyes, you look down to the left, you look center, and down to the right, and look center. And you look around in a circle. And you can go at whatever pace you like. You know, a lot of times our eye muscles have quite a lot of things to say. You know, there's quite a lot of tension that we end up storing in our eyes. And then you can go around the other way. And so this is something that can really be really worth it to be spacious with this. You know, to just sort of like give yourself time to explore the movement in a way where you're not pressuring your eyes or the muscles. Or I have some clients who like get dizzy if they do the eye roll too fast. And then you can switch hands and then do it the same way. Look around in a circle. And all the while, just sort of holding in your presence the aspect of your experience that you picked to tap on. And it's okay if you clean forgot about it too. So, and then you switch from music, numbers. Sort of the traditional one is Happy Birthday. But I encourage people to pick a song that really delights them. Like I always use the Muppet Muppet Show theme song. You know, so it like you go line count. So like, it's time to play the music, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. It's time to light the lights, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then switch hands. It's time to get things started, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. On the Muppet Show tonight, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then my teacher always adds in looking left and right and clapping, you know, because it's the sternocleidomastoid muscles activate when we're in fight or flight. So this helps. So that's the sequence. And then let's just go through a couple rounds just quietly to just get the points. To top of the head. And just notice. Eyebrow. Side of the eye. And under the eye. And if there's any points that feel particularly potent to you, you know, you can stay longer with those points. You know, it's okay to do an entire tapping round on one point if it feels like that's where the action is. You know, including all the points is really just a fail-safe for making sure your bases are covered. And also, like, there's a certain sort of ritualized quality that supports the state changes. You know, it's like once you have a tapping practice and you start to tap, you know, and you start to like go through that cycle, you know, your body kind of quickly goes, oh, like we're healing now, we're releasing, we're coming home, we're finding comfort. You know, it's like, so like even before you get to any of the content, like your body sort of, those systems start to kick in. And then under the arms, you can do it this way. This point should also be sore. This one's a great one for insomnia, anxiety, clumsiness related to anxiety or insomnia. And the chest point. And I'm curious what number people are at now. If you started at one number, where are you at? I was tapping on some congestion, and it went from about a 3 to a 1 for me. Feel free to pop in the chat. And it's also like, so you might find your number go down a little bit, you might go down a lot, or you might find that like tapping on one thing brings up a whole other aspect. So like you might sort of like, say you're tapping on like your ease of breathing. Say that went from like a 6 to a 1, but then like by tuning into yourself, you had some other like emotion come up, and like that might be a 5 or something. And just sort of like noticing like, oh, this is this aspect and this is this other aspect, can be really helpful. Okay, so and I'm going to trot through the rest of the slides. So humor can be a really important part of breaking the hold that patterns have over us. You know, we can support it with exaggeration, dramatic singing or dancing, funny faces or voices, nonsense sounds or movements, or doubling down on absurd worst-case doomsday scenarios. Humor helps the monkeys in our brain take themselves less seriously. I think this is one of the reasons why EFT supports presence so much, because it's like you can bring anything to EFT. You know, it's a canvas for anything. Here's a couple macaques chasing each other, and it says, is there anything you're very serious about protecting yourself from that is maybe not as threatening as you think? And EFT and simplicity and complexity, there's a lot of layers of tools and approaches with EFT that you can learn and grow into. 90% of successful EFT is to notice when you feel distress, remember to tap, and then tapping. You can tap on a schedule if it's difficult to tap in the moment. Tapping does not need to be long or complex to bring relief, and it's also well suited to deep dives. You know, you can tap for 30 seconds and you can tap for 2 hours. Like they're both totally like, totally like things you can do. And the more we tap, the simpler it becomes to return to our center. And here's, I'm not sure what kind of bird this is. What if resetting or coming home to yourself could be simple? Oh, I think that's a kite, actually. And then just a note on respecting enormity and inequity. So our grief and pain have a depth and meaning, and they have existential, historical, societal, and environmental roots and significance. It's okay to be with that pain. And is it okay to tune into any of the, sorry, is it okay to tune into any of the layers of these larger patterns that influence your experience of pain or grief? Can you recall a time your own healing opened doors for another? And here's a tall beech tree. Your heart is an important part of the web of life. Possibilities for liberation. Tapping can help unwind internalized self-blame for external pressures. The more we make room to support and connect with ourselves, the more we can bring our aliveness and wholeness to these various issues. And connecting with ourselves and honoring what is there are integral parts of collective healing. Here's some deer in a dawn field. What are your dreams of collective liberation? And so really quickly, so we can tap for somebody else. Like if you're tapping in a group, you can rate your own issue at the start and put it aside, and then rate it again after you've tapped for somebody else. Here's some grosbeaks eating seeds, and it says we all benefit from one another's well-being. And then surrogate tapping is another possibility. Like if we're working with somebody and they just can't access self-support, always tap on your own reaction to their issues first. And like 99% of the time, you won't need to tap for them. Like that'll create enough of an opening. And here's some more tall trees. Can you recall a time when you experienced relief because someone allowed you space to be yourself? Okay. So I'm curious now. So the just go through these really quickly. So one perspective on anxiety is that it's a signal of deeper emotions that are wanting to be felt and completed. You know, it's like when we're not letting ourselves feel our anger or grief, that we have like the perpetual anxiety because there's that energy that hasn't resolved. It's often a structure in place of a more supportive structure. It can resolve when we reconnect with our power and what supports our life force. And we are capable of feeling our feelings because they're part of our power, our center, our heart, and our life force. What's your relationship to anxiety? Are there any ways anxiety helps you avoid what feels overwhelming? Are there alternate ways of supporting yourself? Here's a cat who's hedging their bets, hiding on some stairs. Then physical pain. We have a lot of layers of beingness, and our physical body is intimately connected with our other layers of self. Many times our bodies tell truths about our life that we don't otherwise know how to express. Even when our pain has a primarily physical cause, and whether or not it can heal, how we are in relation to pain affects our experience of it. How do you relate to pain? You know, a lot of seniors have some pretty long-standing patterns that are part of their physical pain. You know, so just sort of appreciating that there can be just gradual steps to coming into a different relationship. And can you recall a time physical pain told you something important? Here's a monkey looking at their foot. And grief perspectives. According to NARM, allowing ourselves to feel grief connects us with our hearts. Grief connects us with the whole cycle of life, the mystery, as well as those around us and those who come before us and after us. How do you experience your own grief? And here's a raccoon touching a tree. It says, does your grief offer any openings for you to connect with the support and mystery of the larger cycles? Okay. So in this last part, so go ahead and pick an issue for yourself. Is there something you experience anxiety, pain, or grief about? And for the purposes of this exploration, don't choose your most intense issue. And rate out on a scale of 0 to 10. And is there an issue you'd like some relief from today? Okay, and I'm going to close that. And is there anybody who'd like to tap along together, or should we just go through some of the tapping questions?
It looks like we got one comment about how the tapping brings up energy and heat.
Yeah, and does it like, how does it feel to experience that? Like, is that an okay awareness and experience? I think it can be really helpful to just like continually ask that, because like then we're always signaling to ourselves, like, if it doesn't feel okay, it's okay to back off or like change your tack. It's like there's no like necessity to go at a pace that's like not comfortable for us. Okay. Yeah, so is there anybody who wants to volunteer, or should we just jump in with some questions? So let's start with a setup point. So that can be here or here. Okay, so even though I have this issue, I totally and completely love and accept myself. Even though this issue is bothering me, maybe I don't know what to do about it. Maybe it feels really familiar. But right now I'm trying something new. And I'm learning this tool to take care of myself. I'm just curious about what might happen for me. And so even though I have this issue, and part of me doesn't believe it can change. In fact, I have evidence to prove that it can't change. I'm still willing to tap right now. And I know there's a lot of things that I've healed from in the past. But I'll just see what room I can make for my own healing capacity. So you can make that as complex or as simple as you want. And so top of the head. What's bothering me specifically? Eyebrows. What's my sense of possibility around this issue? Whatever that is, it's fine. Like, maybe part of me absolutely believes this can never change. Maybe part of me is really ready for change. Maybe part of me is really eager for change. Side of the eye. What do I want for myself around this? What's my heart's desire? Putting aside whether it's realistic or not. What do I really long for here? And under the eye. How would I feel if I had that? Is it okay to tune into those feelings or that state? And then under the nose and mouth. Are there any emotions coming up for you about this issue? This can be a really helpful thing to track and make room for. And under the collarbone, are there sensations that you notice? And some of these questions might feel more relevant than others. You just sort of go with the ones that make the most sense. And under the arms, is there a particular incident that's a good illustration of your pattern around this issue? It could be something recent, it could be in the past. If it's coming to mind, it's probably still got some juice. And chest point. Do you have a specific memory or a general sense of when you adopted this perspective or issue? Do you remember the first time you felt this way? Or is there an age you feel? And then thumbs. What's this about? This is a question that Eugene Gendlin uses a lot in his focusing work. You know, it's a very sort of open-ended inquiry. Is there something that this issue is trying to help you with? Maybe you feel completely antagonized by it. Or maybe you do have a sense of, oh, this is why I do that thing. This is the innate wisdom. Middle finger. Is there something this issue is trying to protect you from? You know, the monkeys in our brains always think they have great ideas, even if they have terrible ideas. But, you know, the terrible ideas are in the execution. Like the great ideas are in their essential impulse and their desire. You know, and a lot of times we can be at less odds with ourselves if we tune into that. And then pinky, what are all the reasons this pattern is impossible to shift? You can add the phrase, and I have evidence to prove it, to your tapping. If I didn't have this issue, I would have to, this is another way to get to some of the reasons, you know, some of what we might be afraid of if we were free of it. Other thumb, what's the scariest thing about healing this? What's the worst thing that could happen? What do you tell yourself about yourself because of this experience or pattern? What do you tell yourself about the world? Are there things that feel normal to you about this pattern? What would it be like to denormalize it? And I'm noticing the time. So there's 10 million EFT possibilities here. You'll have the different handouts. You know, and these are all just jumping off questions, you know, and hopefully you'll find your own questions. But so let's do the gamut points. So here, close your eyes, open your eyes. Look down to the left, look center. Look down to the right, look center. Go in a circle, keeping your chin in the same place. And go the other way. It's time to play the music. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. It's time to light the lights. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. It's time to get things started. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. On the Muppet Show tonight. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Pop and look. Yeah, so does anybody have any questions or comments or? Just notice where you are. Did anybody have a shift in the thing they chose to tap on?
I personally felt much better. Like I went from a 6 to a 2.
Nice. Yeah. And so, and like a lot of times, like, the advice is like tap from a 6 to 2 and then see if you can tap from a 2 to a 0. Like it's better to tap one thing down to 0 than to try to like tap 3 things down to 5, because it's like you're giving your body the experience of like, oh, I can release this thing. But it's like I mean, that was just like a very short, like little 10-minute round. It was very generic, and it's like that's something I found is like tapping can be super mediocre in general and still be amazing. Like, because it's like all of our healing is in there. Like we just, we're just bringing it home and looking at it. And then our body goes, oh yeah, I know what to do, and so it's really kind of shocking, like how much we deny ourselves that, or like how much we feel like we don't have the permission for that. So just briefly, I noticed it's 11 o'clock. If you look on the slides, the very beginning, so go ahead. So my website is moriahjwilliams.com, moriahjwilliams.com. And I'll be doing another EFT workshop for the Alexander technique in, I think, probably about 6 weeks. We haven't set a firm date. But that's going to be on tapping and like oppression, inflammation, and toxicity, autoimmune, that sort of stuff. But you can sign up for my mailing list there. You can find my Instagram links and stuff. And feel free to drop me a message if you have any further questions. And I hope this was fun and interesting. I know it's just a little taste of a great big thing, but
Thank you all so much for joining us today for Breakout Session 5, Emotional Freedom Technique for Anxiety, Pain, and Grief. I'd like to remind you that we appreciate your feedback, and this session is eligible for continuing education credits. Please complete the evaluation for this session contained in the email you received this morning with the subject line OAC 2023 Post-Session Evaluation Link. Thank you so much, Moriah. This was a wonderful session. And I think everyone learned something really interesting today.
Cool. And it's definitely, it's weird enough that like, particularly like if you find a tapping buddy, you can kind of like egg each other on and like sort of like, I think like doing it by yourself is awesome, but like doing it with a friend can be like even more potent. So yeah. All right.
Thank you so much for your time. And thank you everyone for tuning in.
Bye-bye.